we spent the last 2 days covering the 50 plus page fucking affidavit written by Kerry Thornley with all the corrections and changes and bullshit. And so he then writes an introductory note to his affidavit, which is where we'll start today. This shit is fucking hilarious. So let me see real quick.
One day this week, if you get some time, I have like 100-foot extension cord and some weed edgers, just the edges.
All right, I'm streaming just so you know.
Huh?
I'm streaming just so you know. Oh. Yeah, I got you. Whatever you need. Okay, so let's continue. This is another statement written by Kerry Thornley. And so this is this is an introductory note to the affidavit. So in July of 1975, I learned that a young prisoner named Robert Byron Watson, who claims that he was framed because of his knowledge regarding the assassination of Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy, was accusing individuals he claims are connected with Louisiana mobster Carlos Marcello, both of participation in the assassination and of his own frame-up. Shortly thereafter, I also learned from the newspapers that one of these alleged assassins had reputedly mentioned framing a jailbird for the assassination of King. Those two pieces of information cleared up the remaining doubts in my own mind concerning which individuals I had known in New Orleans in the early 60s were in fact responsible for my own apparent involvement in the murder of John F. Kennedy and for my subsequent frame-up in the investigation of that murder conducted by New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison in the late 60s. This is like the fucking most hilarious of all statements, probably of all time. Those two pieces of information cleared up the remaining doubts in my own mind concerning which individuals I had known in New Orleans in the early 60s were in fact responsible for my own apparent involvement in the murder of John F. Kennedy and for my subsequent frame-up in the investigation of the murder conducted by New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison in the late 60s. That's just fucking hilarious. I'm going to have to quote that directly. Totally freaked out that I had just solved the murder mystery of the century, and almost certain that I would not live to give testimony in any up-and-coming investigations of that crime, I prepared some written statements and made a tape recording for Atlanta Public Safety Commissioner Eves, who was then actively investigating Watson's allegations. I did so hastily, leaving out important contextual details, including only what information I could remember clearly right off the top of my head, and using a style which, reflecting my hysterical state of mind, was paranoid in the extreme. During the half year which passed since then, I have searched my mind day and night, demanding of myself full and complete attention to all relevant details or details which might have possible relevance, forcing myself to examine honestly things I have said and done which do not reflect credit upon me, to say the least, and require myself to dig up numerous long-forgotten and in some cases long-repressed memories. This affidavit is the result. It is far more accurate in very many important respects than the information I gave Commissioner Eves in late July of 75. It is considerably more accurate than the documents I have put together since then, and moreover, it is the first chronological, contextually complete, detailed, and therefore reasonably coherent single document I have composed on the subject of my relationship with Gary Kirsten and Slim Brooks. There's no reasonable doubt in my mind as to its essential correctness, insofar as my conclusions concerning the involvement in the assassination of Kirsten and Brooks go. I am least sure regarding minor matters of chronology and most sure regarding the main thrust of the verbal exchanges which I herein report. I am more than willing to make tapes for PSE examination, take polygraph tests, deliver testimony under oath, and cooperate as much as I can to ensure that these charges are thoroughly investigated. And that's from Kerry Thornley, and it says, note, I realize this draft of the affidavit contains many typographical errors and some mistakes in grammar. I feel the urgency of getting the information out takes priority over perfect form, however, at this time. That's a misplaced, however. All right, so we're going to start getting some of Garrison's other notes on Kerry Thornley. I mean, this is some good stuff. We got like 100 pages of this shit, plus about another 200 pages of other files relating to Kerry Thornley, so this is some really good stuff. So it looks like we got about 10 people tuning in. I appreciate your guys coming and supporting the channel. Make sure to hit the follow button, create an account here on Kick, and then go down and click on follow my gaming channel and follow me over there. I am going to be doing some giveaways, some pre-order book giveaways for people who follow me here and at my gaming channel. I'm going to have to sort how I'm going to do that in the next couple days, but that will be some incentive that I am going to put out there for people to follow me here. This here on Kick is going to be my permanent hangout. So if you don't catch me here, you can catch me at night on the gaming channel, where I do not want to talk about Kennedy, but I fucking will because people are going to ask me, and it's goddamn inevitable because I've already typecast myself. So, all right, so let's get back into this. This is a reference Kerry Thornley in his letters to Philip Boatwright. Philip Boatwright, obviously another low-level CIA guy. When you get through the totality of the Kerry Thornley documents, it becomes pretty fucking obvious. This guy, Kerry Thornley, was just surrounded by CIA handlers. Thornley from Boatwright Correspondence, August 1st, 63 in Whittier, California. And then August 4th of 63, also from Whittier, California. And this quote is listed here. Bud Simcoe, the #1 man in the dedication page of the Idle Warriors, found certain parts of it very much to his taste while not pretending to understand the whole, especially proclaimed the comic peevishness of faintly mad searching of pockets passage and excellent communification. All right, whatever the fuck that's supposed to mean. Bud Simcoe, mentioned numerous times by Kerry Thornley prior to his involvement with Clint Bolton, right? So Clint Bolton, I think it's pretty obvious that Clint Bolton was the fucking CIA handler. And I forget the date that he gave for his interaction with Clint Bolton, but I get the feeling that Bud Simcoe was his handler prior to... Bud Simcoe was the handler prior to Clint Bolton. So... interior dialogue, a notebook I keep. On page 2, he says, I am working as never before, including up to 10 hours sleep, and I've averaged a page a day on a new version of the Idle Warriors. Oh yes, I've started the Idle Warriors on April Fool's Day, so it's almost 1/3 finished by now. Hardly a rapid pace, particularly for revision. Shortly after you left the quarter, I reckon back, I beat the hellfire shit out of Millie one fine morning when she got bitchy. A number of things followed. I'm not sure what he's referencing to here. I'm sure we'll get to it. One, after 2 days of, semi-repentant uncertainty, I was overwhelmed by a sense of total relief. I spent the next few weeks reading Alan Watts, laying around various bars, drinking, trying to make Vic's newest girlfriend, Joan, extending friendly hands to Mim, Loy, and Lane, trying to make Judy Moe's daughter. I don't think you know her, having a casual affair with a little girl from North Carolina, dating Jessica, and drifting from one party to another with seldom opened notebook in my hand. In the midst of this, I got in a fistfight with Henry Avery, Millie's latest brief friend of the moment, in which I was able to severely gouge an eye, sprain my opponent's finger, and emerge with only a light wound on the left forehead. The gouged eye, his. He left me with Herman at his side, explaining that gentlemen do not settle things in such a barbaric manner, and Henry, shouting threats to get a gun and come after me. So I decided to kill him, since he'd initiated the first blow. Okay, so this must be a quote from his book, The Idle Warriors, which I haven't read that. I don't even know it's available. It's really fucking irrelevant. I mean, it seems like it'd be ultra relevant. He wrote a fucking book about Oswald and the assassination 2 years before the fucking assassination. You'd think it'd be relevant. But when you know everything else that he was involved in, it seems to kind of take a back seat. How much of this is fucking relevant? God, I hope I don't have to read fucking the drivel that fucking Kerry Thornley wrote over and over and over again. So here, basically, he's doing some boasting. This is not from that affidavit, so I'm not really sure what the fuck it is. So here he is talking again about the B House, which is the Bourbon House, which is where the sightings of Oswald had taken place, and where Jeannie Hack, his girlfriend in 62, 63, had seen the two of them together. So yeah, like I said yesterday, his fucking 50-page affidavit was a confession. It kind of took me a while, and it just kind of hit me yesterday that he named all the right names. He fucking gave all the right circumstances, except for this Slim Brooks and fucking brother-in-law Gary Kirsten, which is a real mystery. I mean, I'm gonna have to spend some time on this shit one day. Not gonna be anytime soon. It's a weird anomaly in the assassination. Nothing overly that I consider overly important. Just one of those missing pieces I'm curious about. So then they have listed here 8/31/63 postcard from Mexico City. So that would indicate that he was in Mexico City for a goddamn month around that time, because Oswald's trip to Mexico City didn't happen allegedly till September 26th. But we have a Mexico City postcard from Kerry Thornley August 31st, and he was. As I talked about yesterday, he was seen trying to get a job at the radio station in Alice, Texas, with a woman and a child. And that was obviously Kerry Thornley with Marina. And so he fucking spent a goddamn month in Mexico City, or on the road, at least somewhere outside of New Orleans and Dallas. October 3rd of 63, a brief letter announcing his return, and Vic is working in the outrigger at the Sheraton. Jenny... Is that Jerry or Jenny? Jerry Jennings is sitting here playing word games with Millie's daughter. Dick Hoffman is sitting at the bar talking to Pat. This is obviously like some notes from a diary or something. Nothing has changed. Now, this is long after the Hoffman breakup. It indicates both may have known Kerry. This letter concludes. Yeah, I don't know where this is coming from. Miscellaneous notes on Thornley from wherever. A lot of the Garrison stuff isn't really well notated, like, at all. Hand lettering of a child reading, "My name is Valerie. I am grade 2. It's this seems to be a bunch of nonsense. 7/22/63. This is written rather than printed. It announces his projected return via Mexico in September. It concludes Viva Picaro. It has a slight poem on the back. July 22nd, 63. Where the fuck was Oswald in July of 63? Oswald was... Well, I guess technically he was living in Dallas, but he had gone back to New Orleans for a couple months. I think he was in New Orleans those couple months. 12364 from 423 something 31st, apartment 349, Arlington. Okay, so this is this is a note, obviously, from his apartment in Arlington. "I think the Warren Board will inquisit me soon on the assassination. I was a corpse friend of Oswald. If they really get power to suspend the Fifth Amendment, I think I'll refuse to testify, punishment or no, out of sheer outrage. By that date, no single hearing had been held. There is nothing in any of the files to even indicate there was or had been any intention of calling him as a witness or to inquisit. The cause of his outrage is not clear, but the inference I draw is that anyone would think of trying to punish whoever murdered the president. How strange it is that all of the places he could go to be a doorman, he picked the backyard of the thing he pretended to dislike the government." That's fucking great. So this paragraph is a notation on Kerry Thornley's behavior. So let me read this again. This is good. This is talking about when he, in December of 63, he leaves from New Orleans and he goes to Arlington, Virginia, the backyard of the CIA, right? So this is obviously written by one of Garrison's investigators. "By that date, no single hearing had been held. There is nothing in any of the files to even indicate there was or had been any intention of calling him as a witness or to inquisit. So what they're saying there is that when Kerry Thornley is freaking out about being called to testify, that there were no plans to call him to testify at that time. So he's freaking out over nothing, is what they're saying. The cause of his outrage is not clear, but the inference I draw is that anyone would think of trying to punish whoever murdered the president. So they're implying that he's guilty and involved in the assassination because he's scared of being punished for killing the president. And that's ultimately what they're saying here. How strange it is that all the places he could go to be a doorman, he picked the backyard of the thing he pretended to dislike, the government. That's hilarious. Like, if he hated the government so much, why would he go to Arlington, Virginia, is what they're saying. It's hilarious because, as we discussed yesterday, he also got a job as a doorman for fucking a building in California. And who happened to live there? Johnny Roselli, right? Give me a break. Fucking ridiculous. I'm willing to bet it was a mob-owned building. 2/14/64. This is the only letter dated internally to this point, and it uses the military day first. It is a curt response to a request for the return of a written proposal for the sale of a poem dated 2/10. He says he threw it in the trash because I don't collect anything very ardently, not even objectivist newsletters. No point in it, the way I figure let my grandchildren fend for themselves. Interesting. 5/18/64, postmark Washington, a copy of Volume 1, Number 3 of Liberal Innovator. He signed his contribution, The Battle of Madison Avenue. It is amazingly reactionary while pretending to be liberal uses that word despite his Warren Commission testimony. 2/8/64, this one has no envelope. I had a bit of luck with the Idle Warriors, which I now rewrite, as it was based on a Marine Corps buddy of mine who really happens to have been Lee Harvey Oswald. Or did I tell you? Anyway, then and now, it's about a Marine who becomes disillusioned and goes to Russia. Tom Sankton sent the final chapter. Here he is dropping names again, like specific names. Crazy. See, I can't help but think he's doing this for the sole reason of painting himself as innocent around this cabal of conspirators. Tom Sankton sent the final chapter of the old draft to his publisher with a covering letter. So far, no word. Meanwhile, I'm redoing it with more unity and more philosophical, political, cultural damnation. And this is underlined, so let's see. The whole thing was very interesting for a while, the assassination, because on the surface, there was good reason for the unenlightened SS and FBI to suspect I might have had a hand in it. We had some polite conversations, and finally I guess I was cleared. No word from them lately. I hope, though, my move to this area scared the piss out of them. Really? Really? Whether or not I'll be asked to put my 2 cents in at the Warren hearing, I don't know or care. When it's all over, though, I may yet go piss on JFK's grave. Rest in peace. Check the next Saturday Evening Post if you're interested. I got a note from them in my letters to the editor, a sarcastic comment on Arthur Miller's new play. It's tabbed for possible publication. Nothing else except a letter from New York from Jessica asking to come and live with her, but proposing that we not have sexual relations. My reply was only slightly more cutting than my usual nasty remarks. Ho he ha ho. Yeah, Kerry Thornley's like if you haven't been able to tell so far, he's a real arrogant fucking prick. And he's probably a real arrogant prick because he's working with the CIA. He knows he's working with the fucking CIA, and here he is this whole time playing stupid. They're hooking him up with jobs. He's going to Arlington. He's getting jobs at places like working, in the same building as that Johnny Roselli lives at. I mean, give me a fucking break. There's no such thing as coincidence in history, so take from it what you will. Unless one of these letters has a reference to Moonlight, one of the series is missing. The change in attitude to the commission and its work is interesting, as it is the heroic about being suspect. There is nothing in the available record to substantiate it, but were there grounds, this would be even more interesting. Okay, so the notes from Garrison's investigator here are basically saying Kerry Thornley's freaking out about getting in trouble for the Kennedy assassination because he's been named a suspect. But we don't have any information on him being a suspect, so why is he freaking out, right? Kind of a guilty conscience kind of thing. All right, so here, this is some good stuff we're going to get into. So This is a FBI memo from the New Haven, Connecticut field office. Now, New Haven, Connecticut's a real interesting place. Earl Ruby has numerous connections to New Haven. So does Jack Ruby. So does the... There was some interesting stuff in Jack Ruby's file about, which I'm going to have to really spend a fucking year on one of these days. But it talks about his brother Earl and New Haven, Connecticut, and investigations into whether or not they were associated with the Communist Party. I guess it was some sort of large-scale CIA operation going on in New Haven involving the Communist Party. So that's something to add to the to-do list for one of these lifetimes coming up to look into. James A. Spencer, Wallingford, Connecticut, unemployed car salesman, formerly employed February to August 1961 at Dumas and Milnes Chevrolet, New Orleans, Louisiana, advised individual who identified himself as Lee Oswald with address Magazine Street, attempted to purchase a car through him at above concern on unrecalled date. So, what is significant about this thus far? Well, in August of 61, Oswald was still in the fucking Soviet Union. He states this Oswald impressed him as a character and had spoken favorably of Cuba and had appeared to have been very enthusiastic about Castro. So he could not. Let me stop right there. If you look at this fucking note in the Garrison files, in the Kerry Thornley Garrison primary file, it says right there, check out KT, right? Because Oswald's in the Soviet fucking Union, and Garrison knew that Kerry Thornley was impersonating Oswald. Period. That's it. Done deal. Case closed. So basically, most of the things that went on in New Orleans that are attributed to Lee Harvey Oswald, you can pretty much eliminate as having been Kerry Thornley. Okay, he could not recall this individual as having mentioned any connection with the Fair Play for Cuba committee, but this person came in and told them they were communists, they love Castro, just because they're trying to buy a fucking car, right? So this is a separate incident from the incident in October of 63 where William Seymour, posing as Oswald, went to go and do a test drive and shit. That's a whole nother story we'll get to when we get to William Seymour. So the point of this right here is just to go show that fucking... damn it, my coffee's cold. It just goes to show that Garrison knew Kerry Thornley was impersonating Oswald. James A. Spencer, 68 South M, Wallingford, Connecticut, an automobile salesman by occupation, presently unemployed, advised of the following information. Let me fucking screenshot this. This will be important. James A. Spencer, 68 South Elm, Wallingford, Connecticut, an automobile salesman by occupation, presently unemployed, advised the following information. Spencer is married, has 5 children, and resides with his wife, Joan P. Spencer, and his children at the above Connecticut address from early in February 61 to the end of August 1961. Yes, no, both. Spencer, Thornley, definitely a handler for Oswald, and that we talked about yesterday when we talked about the Jones printing incident where Kerry Thornley had been determined by Harold Weisberg, had printed the flyers for for Oswald to hand out, right? So he gave the name of Leon Osborne when he purchased those flyers from Douglas Jones. And obviously, like I said yesterday, he stamped the 544 Camp Street address on those flyers, indicates that he was actually the one who was working with Guy Bannister and all those guys, and I don't think Oswald ever fucking stepped foot in 544 Camp Street, period. Therefore, Kerry Thornley, working under the direction of Bud Simcoe and then later Clint Bolton, was working as Oswald's handler and body double. That's how I conclude this. From early February 1961 till the end of August 1961, he resided at the Parkchester Apartments on Duplessis Street. Good note. Where Sergio Arcacha and Ricardo Davis lived. Ricardo Davis' name continually pops up. He talked to Garrison for a while. I can't really link him to any of the activities in Dallas directly, so him I'll get to eventually. But it's good to know that Sergio Arcacha lived at this fucking address, right? It seems like the CIA guys all clumped together. When you look at how many houses in Oak Cliff were fucking safe houses, there was like 9 of them. I got a list. It's crazy. Yeah, Spencer, it's modus operandi for the CIA. Everybody in fucking Kennedy has a body double. Even Jack Ruby. It was his brother Samuel. All right, so let me continue here. His family had resided with him at that address. However, his wife and children came to Wallingford, Connecticut in July of 1961, and he followed them to Connecticut in September of 61. During the same period, February to August of 61, Spencer was employed as an automobile salesman at the Dumas Milnes Chevrolet Company, 4049 South Carrollton Street at the corner of Tulane Avenue, New Orleans. Shortly after the assassination of President Kennedy, he observed a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald on television. He immediately felt that he had seen Oswald somewhere, by the time he could not recall or place it. So this is a fucking perfect example. This is like the story of my fucking life, right? Like, I keep coming across stories of people like, I swear to God, I saw Oswald on television, and I knew I had seen him somewhere, right? But this incident in particular, definitely not Oswald, because Oswald was in the fucking Soviet Union. So it attests to a couple things. It attests to how similar Kerry Thornley looked to Lee Harvey Oswald. And we again have fucking Garrison knowing that it was Kerry Thornley, right? Right here. Check out KT. He knew it, right? So here, to me, this is as goddamn, as an ex-cop who knows how to analyze evidence, this is about as fucking close to proof as you get that Kerry Thornley was fucking impersonating Oswald. And we have witnesses like this guy, Mr. Spencer, who happened to live at the same apartment complex as Sergio Arcacha and Ricardo Davis, and he had seen Oswald there, right? And so what does that imply? That Kerry Thornley was coming around there, right? Shortly after the assassination of President Kennedy, he observed a photo of Lee Harvey Oswald on television. He immediately felt he had seen that person before. Let me scroll down. A few days ago, while looking through his billfold, he found a business card, which he had used while employed as a salesman in Dumas. On the back, it had the handwriting Lee Oswald, Magazine Street. And what was the date on this? This was between, this was in 61, right? So this is a year and a half after the Bolton Ford incident. Bolton Ford was January of 1960. So, again, like, they're just planting seeds, right? They're just leaving. What did this guy do? So let's look at this incident as a whole. So this guy deals with Kerry Thornley at some point, who drops a bunch of hints that he likes Castro and communism, right? He leaves these seeds in this guy's mind. Then clearly it says right here, after the assassination of President Kennedy, he observed a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald on television. He immediately felt that he had seen Oswald somewhere, but at the time he could not recall the place or the circumstances, and the name Lee Harvey Oswald did not mean anything to him at the time. Okay? Exactly, it didn't mean anything to him at the time. But what did Kerry Thornley do? Kerry Thornley planted the seeds of Lee Oswald in this guy's mind. They did this because they knew after the assassination, everyone would see Oswald on TV in these grainy black and white photographs, right? And when you have a guy who looks just like the motherfucker, same height, basically the same weight. Well, Kerry Thornley was a little taller. He was an inch or two taller than Oswald, which is kind of where some of the discrepancies and some of the descriptors go from some of the witnesses throughout the case. But the point I'm making here is, like, this is exactly how it goes. Like, the person will see Oswald on television. Then they'll be like, holy shit, I think that was the person who came in my store, blah, 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 blah. Then they go forward, and that's how you end up with 100 sightings of Lee Harvey Oswald planting these communist seeds everywhere, right? A few days ago, I already got to this part. Lee Oswald, blah, blah, blah. He does not recall the particular car this individual was interested in, but believes it was similar to his own car, which is a 58 Chevy. He does not recall when it was that this individual came to the car lot, but stated the same individual returned a second time. He dealt with this individual on both occasions, but he does not know whether this individual had any contact with anyone else connected with the Dumas and Milnes Company. Spencer stated that, as he recalled, there was some question of the ability of that individual to make a down payment, and on the occasion of the second visit, both went across the street for coffee at a Walgreen, interesting spelling, drugstore. At some time during the conversation, he managed to get the name and address of the individual who wrote his name and address on the back of one of his business cards. He stated at the time this individual made quite an impression on him, as he considered the man to be quite a character. He stated that although he cannot recall any specific statements this man made, the man spoke at length about Cuba and appeared to be very enthusiastic about Castro. Spencer stated that at the time there was quite a large group of persons in New Orleans which Spencer said was interested in fair play for Castro. He could not recall whether or not this man had said he was connected in any way with such group. He stated there had been some individuals passing out handbills favorable to Cuba at various times on the very corner on which the Dumas and Milnes company is located. Okay, so he stated there had been some individuals passing out handbills favorable to Cuba at various times, right? So here we go with various times, and this is a different location from the Trade Mart, right? So the operation that involved Oswald handing out flyers wasn't a once and done. It was happened numerous times in front of the Trade Mart, and happened here in front of the Dumas and Milnes company. The best one was the one in, what fucking month was it? Was it August? Yeah, it had to have been August. Was it August 9th? It had to have been prior to August 9th. The incident involving Carlos Brenier, when Carlos Brenier gets in a fight with Oswald on the street corner, that was on August 9th. So, prior to that, the incident involving the television station WDSU, that happened to occur before that, because that was the time when Jesse Core of the Trade Mart and John Corporan of WDSU met with Oswald on the street corner and filmed him, interviewed him, and then set up the interview that he did where he claimed to be the Marxist-Leninist, where he was debating Carlos Brenier. It's fucking hilarious. I mean, the whole thing was staged. If you haven't learned this about the Kennedy assassination, it is a play. It is a theatrical production. It is a series of staged events presented to you as history. And that's what the fucking CIA does. All right, let me continue here. Spencer stated that he could not recall having actually sold an automobile to this man, and he does not know whether this man ever purchased an automobile from Dumas and Milnes Company. Spencer stated that this man had made such an impression on him, that being an oddball, that he mentioned to him his wife at the time. He noticed that it was seldom that he ever mentioned anything about his customers to his wife. Spencer stated that he could not recall the physical description of the man he knew as Oswald, and he had no further information concerning the man other than he felt this man was a very self-sustaining individual because he insisted in paying for his own cup of coffee. Interesting. Spencer advised that he had recently discussed this matter with a friend of his who sometimes writes articles for a newspaper, and it was suggested that if he could determine that the man he knew as Oswald was identical with the Oswald who had been charged with the assassination of President Kennedy, he might be able to get an article syndicated as a human interest story. Everyone's looking to cash in, right? So he stated that for this reason, although there is not much doubt in his mind that they were one and the same person, he had telephoned the FBI office at New Haven, Connecticut on the night of December 12th, 1963, seeking to learn if the New Orleans address of the man charged with the assassination of the president was the same as the address of the Lee Oswald with whom he had come in contact. Spencer stated he did not think the information he had would be of any significance to the government, for if he had, he stated he would have immediately called it to the attention of the FBI. Okay, so this is just one of many, many sightings of Oswald that weren't Oswald. Eventually, probably towards the end of the week, if I can get through the next couple files quickly, we will get to the Weisberg false Oswald folder. And that's got about 100 files in it. Fucking great stuff. None of it Oswald. Miss Joan Spencer. This is obviously Mr. Spencer's wife. She resided with her husband at New Orleans, Louisiana from February to June 61. She advised that her husband, who was employed as a car salesman while in New Orleans, had frequently spoke to her of different customers. She recalled that he spoke to her of one customer who seemed to have particularly impressed her husband as being some sort of a character. She could not recall, however, the name of this particular individual, nor could she recall anything her husband had said about that individual. All right. Conversation between James L. Alcock and Robert Carno on May 14th, 1968. Reference Kerry Thornley. What do we have here? This is obviously an interview. Mr. Carno states he works for a finance corporation. What is this in reference to? Okay, so this is going to be in reference to an incident with Oswald. I'm not sure if this is connected to that car incident. Let me ask you this. Did you ever meet Oswald here in the city? Well, I believe I did. I'm almost sure I did twice. Do you want to tell me about the occasions and the person you thought was Oswald? Once at the Ryder Coffee House on Rampart Street, 700 block of Rampart, and it was either in the last part of the summer or September of 63. What makes you think it was Oswald? I was considering myself at the time a writer, and I was talking to a lot of people, and he did mention that his name was Lee, and I thought I remembered it was Oswald, the last name. When you saw the pictures after the assassination, did it recall? Not right away. I'd say the second day it did. Now, the meeting you had with him at the Ryder Coffee House, was that the first meeting you had with him or the second meeting? The first. First meeting. Do you recall what you were doing there or what he was doing there or how you met? I had come in and he was sitting at a table, and I was sitting at a table next to him when we got into a discussion. And it was, I wouldn't say a political discussion. It was at the time it was about President Kennedy. At the time it was more over the line of the Democratic Party, President Kennedy and his objectives. At the time I didn't know that much about it because I hadn't followed the political thing. What did he say principally? I mean, I really couldn't tell you because I really don't remember, but it wasn't too much because we got into something else right after that. Do you recall what that was? It was either a painting or writing, but I'm not too sure. I know Jeff Kerouac had something to do with it. That was a writer. Was he alone? I remember, yes. Do you recall how he was dressed? He had a pair of sneakers on and a white kind of tan pants. If that's the same man. And only reason I remember that is because I had the same thing on. Did you stand up next to him at any time, or were you seated all the time? I don't think I was standing at the time that he was. And you had no way to really judge his height. No, but he was kind of skinny. He didn't appear to be with anyone. Not that I can remember, no. You just happened to sit at his table. I sat at the table next to his, which was almost at his table, as a matter of fact, because I was facing his table. Were you with anybody? I didn't go with anybody at the time, but I was with people later. Do you feel anybody you saw talking to him? No, not that I can remember. Did you know the bartender there or the person who served the refreshments at the time? Yes, I did. What was his name? His name was Jack Frazier. Okay, so big pause right here. Jack Frazier. Jack Frazier works for the CIA. Ryder Coffee House. Jack Frazier is also connected to the Riley Coffee Company. So these are obviously... So this is what happens, right? So you get these fucking guys who are CIA. And once you're CIA for life, right? So if you want to fucking retire and go open a coffee shop, guess what? You just opened a fucking CIA coffee shop. And that's exactly what Ryder Coffee and Riley Coffee Company and all these fucking front companies. That's all they were. Like even like Jagger's Charles Scoval and where else? The fucking alleged welding company that fucking Oswald worked for. Gave me a fucking break. Can you picture Oswald with fucking welding equipment in his hand? Give me a break. So Jack Frazier, bartender at the Ryder Coffee House, ex-military, funds the CIA, definitely CIA front company. So that's how this works. Right? These guys have CIA front jobs where they get a paycheck funneled through, so it looks like on paper they have a real job, but really the CIA is paying that company to put them on the payroll and keep that position looking legitimate. That's it. Jack Frazier, do you recall whether or not he served you any refreshments at the time you were talking to Oswald? I'm not sure if he was even there at the time because he took a blank. I don't know what the blank is. It's obviously redacted, and then Garrison underlined the redaction. He might not have even been there at the time. He might have been on vacation because there was a time that he was gone towards the summer, the last part of the summer or the beginning of September. Possibly that he was. Do you remember anything about a scheduled talk with Fair Play for Cuba committee that was scheduled for the Ryder House? The only thing I know about Fair Play for Cuba committee is what I've read in the paper. He didn't mention anything about Castro or Cuba that you can recall. I realize that this is a long time ago. No, I don't even think I heard anything about that before. Are you fairly certain it was Oswald? No. Are you fairly certain it was Oswald? No. You're not certain it was? More than likely, I think it could have been. Right? This is what you get from everybody who interacted with fucking Oswald. More than likely, it kind of could have been, right? No one is definitive. Because they couldn't be. It's impossible for them to have been. Well, you say he mentioned his name was Lee, and you feel he might have even said Oswald. Something like that, because I met him later. Where did you meet him later? At the public library, okay? Now, this is fucking fantastic, right? So, why is this important? Why is the public library important? Well, because the whole incident with David Ferry and his library card, and allegedly Oswald had it on him when he got arrested, but he didn't. That's a whole bunch of fluff. But ultimately, libraries were being used by the CIA as places where people could covertly meet. Period. Hell, even Jack Valente sat on the fucking National Public Library board at a time that he was at the peak of his fucking, spy shit. I love how Garrison caught that also. Garrison caught it also with the exclamation point. Where? Napoleon and Magazine. Lee Harvey Oswald. What does that say? I can't read that. Lee Harvey Oswald. Something. See. Ferry library card incident. Right. So Napoleon and Magazine was where allegedly David Ferry's library card was issued, right? So, yeah, the whole story's fun. It's all bullshit, but it's noise. Like, don't get caught up in the noise. Well, I used to live off of Earhart Boulevard, and I used to go to the park it was during the last part of the summer, and I caught the Magazine bus to Napoleon, and then I would catch the Napoleon bus to Louisiana, and then just walk 4 or 5 blocks or catch another bus after that. And when you saw him at the branch library, did he recognize you? Well, he said hello, and I said hello, and that's all you said at the time? I think so. I was going to check out a book, but I didn't. Where was he in the library? Do you recall what? He was sitting at a reading table. A reading table? Do you recall what he was reading? No, I don't. I take it then you didn't have any conversation with him at that time. Not more than 2 words. Did it appear to be the same person that you had seen in the Ryder Coffee House? It was the same person. All right, so here we go. This is good stuff. This is how you create a string of identification statements. So here we go. So now we can say that the person, it's obviously Kerry Thornley. It's not motherfucking Oswald, right? So this person we can conclusively say was the same person that Mr. Spencer had met with, both at the Ryder Club and at the library, right? So once you link those two together, then those are forever linked, and you can say that those are the same person. So if you come up with like some contradictory information later, you have to go back and incorporate that into your ultimate conclusion. Let me see. About how long after this did you saw him at the Ryder Club? I figure it was 2 weeks at the most. Do you remember what time of day it was you saw him in the Ryder Club? It was in the evening. It had to be after, let's say 6:30, but late evening. No, it couldn't have been because Ivan's hadn't started yet. That's what I was waiting for. It was a discussion group that I used to go to on Fridays. You feel it was a Friday. I know it was a Friday. So this is this is perfect, right? So he's giving you specifics on dates, times, and all this stuff. And if you're a real fucking nerd and you're going to make a chronology of Kerry Thornley's activities, then this is perfect for pinpointing when and where he was in New Orleans. Because remember, he ends up going to Dallas and ends up shooting J.D. Tippit and all this stuff and setting up Oswald by shooting at bales of hay and going to ask about gun stores and stuff like that, right? So pinpointing when these people were where so you can catch them in lies later is paramount. God, I wish I could clone myself and fucking do all the research like quick. What time did this discussion group begin? 9 o'clock, and you feel it was sometime between 6:30 and 9. It was after 6:30, but way before 9. Way before 9, right. Did you leave him there, or did he leave you at the Ryder Club? I think I left him. I'm almost positive. You're almost positive you left him. Yeah, because I went upstairs in the back. Did you come back down at all before you went to the discussion group? I did, but I went out the back way. Let me see if this doesn't seem like anything else is relevant here. So here we have narrowed down roughly a season, a month, a day, and a time that this incident occurred, pinpointing an Oswald sighting that was obviously Kerry Thornley. All right, let me see if I can skip most of this. Okay. On either one of these occasions, did he appear neat? I wouldn't say neat. He had sort of a short sleeve kind of knit-like shirt on and a pair of pants. I don't know what kind of shoes he had on. How about his hair? Was it combed, as you recall? It was combed, but not, I can't really remember too well. I understand. It's a long time ago. Did he appear to pretty neatly dressed. I mean, neat as far as, were clean clothes. Yeah, they were kind of wrinkled, but they were clean. That's a clue right there. Boop, boop. Now, why is that a clue? Because fucking Oswald was always neat. He didn't wear wrinkled shirts, ever. And so here we go, where we can start to link other descriptors to Kerry Thornley specifically, right? Like, attitude aside, here we have Kerry Thornley, who is kind of half-assed neat, right? Wearing a wrinkled shirt. Oswald would have been caught dead in a wrinkled shirt. Did he appear to need a shave at any time? Not that I can remember. He kept sit. Do you recall what he might have been drinking or eating in the Ryder Club? It was probably coffee because I remember I had a pie, a coconut. I think it was coconut. You were smoking then, weren't you? I mean, you had been smoking 3 or 4 years, haven't you? Since I was 18. Was he smoking or wasn't he? Because if he wasn't, you might have noticed. No, I didn't notice. Do you feel you had ever seen him in any of these meetings at Varick's house, Joe Varick's house? No, I had. I didn't meet Joe Varick until 1964. Joe Varick. Here's another fucking name. I'm not going to get to it this book, but it'll have to go in the Rolodex. No, I didn't meet Joe Varick till 64. Oh, I see. Where was that? Where did Varick have his meetings? Peniston and Magazine. No, sir. I didn't even know he lived up there. He used to live up on Port Street with his parents when I knew him, and I'm not sure what he was involved in at the time, but he was involved in Spartacus, which is a group which I don't have anything to do with. Did you ever attend any of the meetings with Varick? Yes, I did. I went to a meeting once in 65. It was after October, but before January of 65. What kind of meeting was that? Black Panther meeting or something. It was a civil defense for Negroes, but I left because it seemed like it was pretty violent and I didn't want to get involved in it. Did it seem Nazi-oriented to you? It just seemed like talking about doing something is one thing and saying it should be done and going out and doing something is something else, and I didn't want to get involved. It's just an overthrow type of organization. Was it an integrated meeting? Semi. What do you mean by semi? There were more colored people than white because it was a Black Panther organization. I think there was 3 white people against maybe 8 or 9 colored people. Where did that meeting take place? On Dryad Street, in the Corps office. Aha. Corps office. What Corps office? Is he talking about Jesse Corps, who is Clay Shaw's right-hand man? The New Orleans chapter of Corps. Oh, no. Corps he's talking about, that's just another one of these fucking Cuban organizations. Did you ever know a man before by the name of Eddie Porter? Eddie Porter, I know a few people by the name of Eddie, but I don't know if his last name is Porter or not. Do you know Ernesto Rodriguez? Ernesto? Have you ever worked in the School of Languages? I didn't work the School of Languages. I frequented the modern, what was it? I know a place behind it did a kind of helped open up a workshop, fine ARS workshop in the back of it. I did meet Ernesto Rodriguez. I don't know his last name, but that's the first name. So I don't know what Garrison's getting at here. He's trying to connect this guy to Ernesto Rodriguez, who, from my research, the name has come up. I can't find any relevance to it. But you got to think, back in 1967, with no internet, Garrison was throwing shit at the wall and seeing what would stick. And unbelievably, a lot stuck. Most of this seems pretty... Okay. We're going to touch on something that we touched on yesterday. All right, so I'm going to have to continue through this. How many times did you meet with him? How many times did you see him? 7 or 8? And he's talking about this Ernesto Rodriguez guy. What was this shop you were opening up? What was the name? It wasn't opening it up myself. Someone else was. It was a fine arts workshop. Was loving with you, working with you then. I was kind of working with him, helping him. I don't know some of these names. In other words, neither of you worked for the Modern School of Languages or Modern Languages. Roger Lovin worked for it for a while that I know of. Have you ever told anybody about having seen this person you think might have been Oswald? Barbara Reed. Remember, Barbara Reed was the associate of Kerry Thornley. So now I'm starting to think that this person, Spencer, is this Spencer's name? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. This person is fucking lying at this point. Because the person is obviously Kerry Thornley they met with, but yet they have told that they saw Oswald to Barbara Reed. And Barbara Reed is Kerry Thornley's friend. So this person has a mutual friend with Kerry Thornley, Barbara Reed. And he told Barbara Reed he thought he saw Oswald. Okay? And I don't remember if it was Barbara Reed or Jeannie Hack who saw Oswald with fucking Kerry Thornley together. But either way, what you should start to glean from this is that these people are all in cahoots, right? They're all in cahoots. This person who's supposed to be identifying Oswald, who actually interacted with Kerry Thornley, happens to have a fucking mutual friend with Kerry Thornley in Barbara Reed. So let's see who else he told. Yeah, so this whole thing was fucking set up to make it look like Oswald was there, but he wasn't, right? So, like, again, this comes back to a staged series of scripted events put together as history. That, to me, tells me I can discount the vast majority of the rest of this fucking statement. Because it's a pre-planned scripted event, again, to add to the fucking list. Okay, here he asks him, do you know Kerry Thornley? And he goes, I thought you'd bring that up. I've met him twice. Where did you meet him? Once now, the first time I may not be sure of, I thought I met him once before at the Bourbon House with Roger Lovin because I thought he introduced me to him because at the time he was writing something. Now, this had to be in 63 or 64. Probably it was 63, yeah. It would definitely be in 63, I would imagine. And the second time was just a few weeks ago. He came over to my house for someone else to find out if I had ever met him somewhere before. Hold on a second. And the second time he was just a few weeks ago, he came over to my house for someone else to find out if I had never met him somewhere before. Okay, my brain starts to just melt when I read certain things. There's some shenanigans afoot. Let's go over this again. And the second time was just a few weeks ago. He, Kerry Thornley, came over to my house for someone else to find out if I had ever met him somewhere before. So he's going to go to this guy's house and knock on the door and go, hey, So this guy, Kerry Thornley, shows up at this guy's house and goes, hey, have I ever met you before? Is what he's telling him. He came over to your house. Yeah. Alone? No, with Slim Brooks. Okay, so Kerry Thornley and Slim Brooks go to this guy's house to ask if he ever met him before. I mean, alarm bells should be going off. Yeah, and I thought I had it first, but now I'm kind of confused if I did meet him at the Bourbon House, because I think I did, because if this is the same person, he had a briefcase and he was writing something, and at the time we discussed poetry and writing and stories and stuff. Okay, so this is fucking ridiculous. Yeah, this is all bullshit. This statement is completely fake. They're in on this statement. He's shaping this statement because he knows Kerry Thornley. They have a mutual friend in Barbara Reed. Here's another. See, Garrison is asking all the right questions here. He's asking about where he lived, where he saw him at. Here we go. And you've seen him, you say twice, you say around your house. Well, he used to live there. I don't think he lives there anymore. I saw him a couple months ago getting into a car. Have you ever seen him driving any car that you can recall? I've only seen him getting in a car twice, once in a long black car. Some woman was in the back seat with a chauffeur, and the second time, the first time was another large car, American car, but I don't know what it was or the color either. So he's talking about Kerry Thornley. Interesting. How about Dean Andrews? Do you know him? Yes. So this guy knows Dean Andrews also, the lawyer who allegedly was Clay Schuck called to get Oswald a lawyer. How do you know him? Well, a friend of mine got into trouble once, and he was a district attorney or assistant district attorney in Jefferson Parish, and I got to know him. Well, no, he got to know him because all these guys were fucking hanging out at the gay club. In fact, just going up and talking to him, my friend talked his problems out to him, and we got, halfway friends. And when was that? What year was that? It was late 66, I would imagine. This was after the assassination. Do you know a man by the name of Jeff Bitterson? I do, but I don't know where. I know the name, but I can't place him. So if you haven't, I mentioned this already a lot. So this fucking file, there's just names being spit out like crazy here. Drowning Garrison in names to go and research. I do, but I don't know where. I know the name, but I can't place him. He's an older man. You had a library card at the Napoleon branch at that time. I had a Maine card, I think, at that time. It was for I think on the Loyola Street at that time. Up in the Variety Club, there was a whole bunch of kinds that came up from East Jefferson High. Did you know any of them? Did you know Philip Garachi? Okay, so Philip Garachi is a name that pops up a lot. There's multiple files on Philip Garachi, and I read through them, and it seems like he was just some well-to-do guy that was hanging out with a bunch of gay kids, and they were all fucking, and then they got arrested in after some orgy. And a bunch of these guys who were connected to Kennedy got arrested with Philip Garachi. But I can't really see any overt significance to it, other than maybe Garrison was trying to make some relationship connections through him. I don't know. I haven't been able to find the fucking relevance yet. Philip Garachi, I don't think so. We weren't on last name terms. Everybody knew everybody by their first name or a nickname, and it's pretty hard, 3 or 4 years ago. I meet some of the people now, and I'll say so and so, and it's not their usually a real name, but I don't know. I knew a Philip from the Rider, but I don't know if that's him. He was young. Did you know another Rider named Philip Boatwright? No. That was working on a newspaper. And did you ever meet Vic Latham, a tall guy, a playwright? No. Did you ever know David Ferry? No, I never heard of him before this thing happened, before it came in the news. How about Leighton Martins? In a way, I knew him. I knew of him. I met him once, but that was way after the assassination. Where did you meet him? I met him through a friend of mine who used to go out with him. What did Thornley want when he came over to see you? It was pretty late, and I had been woken up, so it's kind of hard to remember, but I know my wife would remember. Something about did I ever see him at the Bourbon House or something like that. See, the Bourbon House keeps coming up over and over again, right? Because a lot of these people who you only fucking ever hear about through these various Kerry Thornley files came forward to Garrison saying, hey, I fucking met Lee Harvey Oswald at the Bourbon House. But Kerry Thornley was known to hang out at the Bourbon House, and Oswald didn't fucking drink. He was a loner. He didn't hang out nowhere, right? So when you really come to absorb all of these fucking various incidents involving Oswald, and you come to understand the personalities that each one of these men had, in particular William Seymour, Kerry Thornley, and Oswald, it's fucking obvious he was being impersonated by these two men everywhere. I forgot how densely packed with information these Kerry Thornley files were. What did Thornley do when he came over to see you? It was pretty late, and I had been woken up, so it's kind of hard to remember. See, this guy's intelligence also has to be because he's using these I had just been woken up, so it's hard to remember, right? So what does that got to do with anything? Nothing. It's distraction techniques. But I know my wife would remember. Something about did I ever see him at the Bourbon House or something like that. I think I told him I thought I'd saw him a time I met before, but now I'm not even sure. But I know now I've met him once. You see, I thought I knew him, and when he came over, he didn't look anything like I thought he looked. Okay. So, Garrison caught this, and I just caught this, and this is why it's underlined. What did Thornley want when he came over to see you? Okay. Pay close attention to these words. It was pretty late, and I've been woken up, so it's kind of hard to remember, but I know my wife would remember. Okay. Something about did I ever see him at the Bourbon House or something like that. I think I told him I thought I'd saw him at a time I met him before, but now I'm not even sure. But I know now I've met him once. You see, I thought I knew him, and when he came over, he didn't look anything like I thought he looked. Barbara Reed IDs Kerry Thornley, the Bourbon House, and Kerry Thornley cleans up. I can't see what that says. Well, he's changed considerably since then. Did you ever hear of a friend of Leighton Martin's who went to Southeastern, Mike Calliette Jr.? No. How about Alvin Beaubouf? Do you know him? That's familiar, but I don't know where I know him from. The name of Beaubouf is familiar, the last name. The first name, a little. They should be put together. Isn't that what? Did this man that you thought might have been Oswald did you notice whether or not he was wearing a wedding ring? No, I didn't notice. When he talked, how did he? I mean, when you remember the scene, how did he lean over the table? How did he sit at the table? Did he have any books with him there? Or was he had some kind of it wasn't a book actually. It looked more like a note leaf thing. This is the same man. I might be getting two men confused now, but like the thing with the little prongs, you put the paper on, you close it up. I'm not sure what they call them, but you see what I mean. See, here again with the over descriptions, right? Was he sitting forward on the table or no? The first time I saw him, he was leaning back on the two front legs of the chair, because when I walked by the first time, it was kind of crowded, and I thought if I walked too close to him, I could knock him off the chair. That's the only reason I remember that. What? This is ridiculous. And he got into the conversation with you, I noticed. I mean, how? Did he go with his hands like that, or was he using his hands to gesture? I don't remember. And you don't recall anything that might have been there at the time and might have seen what you saw. Pat or Patrick Patton or Pat. I'm pretty sure that one time they were... okay, so we can tell here the last name was redacted. I'm pretty sure at one time they were. I know that they were at Last Trump, which is right across the street from that closed up. But I'm also there. I've seen him there. They're still in town too, aren't they? They're living at, I think it's 2528 Frankfurt. No, they left. They were around the rider constantly. They went to California, if I'm not mistaken. Can you think of anybody that might have been there that... I know people that were there when I was there usually. Richie Albrecht and his wife Mala. Both of them are out of town. I don't know where either of them are now. There was also a girl named Denny that there was, but I don't remember her last name, and I haven't seen her since then. Okay, so ultimately what's going on here is that Garrison is trying to determine whether the person who keeps getting seen at the fucking Bourbon House is Kerry Thornley or Oswald. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point. Okay, let me see if I can skip some of this shit. Alright, let me grab another cup of coffee. I'll be back in like 2 minutes. So, okay, so this is to Jim Garrison from Andrew Scambria, Assistant DA, in regards to his interview with Daphne Stapleton. If this doesn't have any relevance, I'll end up skipping it. I'm sure it's got some nugget in there that's good. I interviewed Daphne Stapleton at her home in Mobile in the presence of her mother, who was 83 years old and who was also very reluctant to let me in the house. Daphne Stapleton, who was inclined to be cooperative with us, was ill in bed and finally had to get out of bed and come to the front door to let us in. All during our interview, which lasted approximately 45 minutes, her mother kept yelling at her not to talk and don't get involved. However, Daphne seemed to feel like she would rather talk to us than anyone else, and did so over the objections of her mother. I mentioned the above circumstances merely to point out the need to talk to this witness alone in order to get all the information from her, as it was she related the following information to me. Daphne Stapleton said that she and her husband lived in one of the apartments above the Ryder Coffee House during the summer of '63. She's either separated from her husband or divorced from him now. She lives at 6702 Avenue R, Houston, Texas, and works at the Austin Printing Company in that city. His name is Marvin Lavelle Wyman. He is also known by the nickname Red. I swear to God, like 4 different quote-unquote Reds popped up in the Kennedy assassination. Fucking sucks. Totally irrelevant. Wasted a lot of time on it. All right, here we go. Noted by Garrison on the left, Lee Harvey Oswald at Ryder Coffee House. Daphne Stapleton told me that she met Lee Harvey Oswald one time. She said that she was standing at the front of the Ryder Coffee House when Lee Harvey Oswald walked up to her and asked her, "Is Jack here?" She said that Jack that Lee Harvey Oswald was referring to was Jack Frazier. She, the owner and CIA contact at the Ryder Coffee House, she told Oswald that Frazier was not around at the time, but that he would probably be back later on. She said that Oswald then wrote his name on a piece of paper and said to give the paper to Jack. She said she took the paper, read the name on it was Lee Oswald, and he put the paper in a book she had handed to her. Oh, she had in her hand. She said that either gave the paper back to Jack Frazier when he came back or merely told him that Oswald was looking for him. She said that after she told Oswald that Frazier was not around, he walked past her and went to Howard Cohen's apartment. Evidently, Cohen was not in because a short while later, Oswald passed her on the steps as he was coming back from Cohen's apartment. She said Oswald stopped and helped her catch her little cat, which had gotten away from her. So here we have allegedly Oswald interacting with someone who is associated with Howard Cohen, who we don't know who the fuck that is, right? Remember, Oswald's a loner. Oswald didn't know nobody. Daphne said, as best she can remember, a woman drove Oswald up to the Ryder Coffee House. She said the woman was an elderly woman with sort of gray hair in her 40s. Oh, elderly in her 40s. Jesus. Daphne said she did not know the type of car the woman was driving, but it appeared to be some sort of red sports car. She said that she has already talked to Dave Snyder of the New Orleans State's item. She believes he was sent to her by Bill Sulzer. Sulzer is related to Nina Sulzer, who works in Lewis Hyde's office, possibly her father. I asked her why Sulzer sent Snyder to her, and she said that she did not know, except that Sulzer was one of the people who had contact with Lee Harvey Oswald, but say in the official story. You ever heard of this guy? No, of course not. She said that after the assassination, Sulzer left for Florida and told her not to talk to anyone about Lee Harvey Oswald. Daphne said to her knowledge she did not know whether or not Lee Harvey Oswald stayed in any of the apartments by the Ryder Coffee House for any length of time. She said that Oswald also asked her if she knew Red. She said that her husband's nickname is Red, but she doesn't believe Oswald was referring to him. Daphne said that some of the people who may be able to provide us some information about Oswald at the Ryder Coffee House are Pat and Patty Gleason, Matthew Louver, Arnold Eklund, Louis Gorge, Breck Henry, and Louis Jackson. She said all of these people were around the Ryder Coffee House or lived there. Ryder Coffee House patrons of the period is what is written in the notes. Daphne Stapleton seemed to be very anti-communist and said that we should talk to Howard Cohen, who was the head of a Marxist group around the coffee house. Okay, so this is... Why would you have a fucking Marxist hanging out in a CIA-run fucking coffee house? Why? Fake communists, that's why. I asked Daphne what information she gave to Dave Snyder of the United States item, and she said not much. She said Snyder told her that he wanted to talk to her because of the state's item was going to prove that Garrison did not have a case and that all he was interested in was a witch hunt. Daphne Stapleton, as I mentioned earlier, was physically ill and had gotten out of bed to talk to me. Because of her illness and her mother literally screaming and crying during our interview, the interview was rather difficult. I told her that I would be back to talk to her when she's feeling better and perhaps when she would be alone. She said she would be glad to talk to me because she has nothing to hide. It is interesting to recall Tommy Baumler's remarks to Barbara Reed that if the district attorney's office wants to find out about Lee Harvey Oswald, they should look into his activities at the Ryder Coffee House. That's interesting. C. Jack Frazier's statements that KT went to discussions at Ryder weekly. Note KT states he never saw Lee Harvey Oswald in New Orleans. So allegedly, you got a person being seen who's identified as Lee Harvey Oswald by a person, Daphne Stapleton, who knows Kerry Thornley. All these people are trying to put Lee Harvey Oswald in New Orleans, but they can't because it's Kerry Thornley. These people are all been roped into this. All right. Some of the New Orleans shit, when you really get into the weeds, like especially like with the Perry Russo stuff, oh my fucking God, it gets so dry. Okay, so this is from Lynn Loisel to Jim Garrison. Additional information from Noto. I don't know what Noto is. I just talked at some length with Noto, and he remembers some more details about the truck and the man with Oswald. Are we discussing the Bolton Ford incident now? We might be. Well, let me read this and figure it out. I just talked to someone like that. Noto, he remembers some more details about the truck and the man with Oswald. I am giving this to you in the form of a memo right now so that you can have someone start it immediately attempting to identify the man with Oswald. The truck had a sign painted on the side to the effect that the business was a TV, electronics, parts, and service, or words to that effect. It was a black and white truck, black on the bottom and white on top. Noto's recollection is that the words were black words on a white background. He also recollects that the business was located on Broad Street. He remembers further details about Oswald, which I will not attempt to duplicate here because he is giving us a longer statement. And these added details confirm in my mind that this was Lee Harvey Oswald, whom he saw on the lakefront. There is a problem about the year, however. He remembers it as probably 1962, but possibly 1963. The man with Oswald was definitely a Latin, okay? So, remember, who's the Latin who's always seen with Oswald? Lawrence Howard, but is that the case back in 1960 or 1961? Don't know. Can't make the relationship solid between Kerry Thornley and Lawrence Howard, or, you know, I can't mix these groups, even though they all knew each other. I just can't say with 100% certainty. The man with Oswald was definitely a Latin. He was the driver of the truck, and Noto's impression is that he identified himself as a TV and electronics technician. He was tall, thin, and somewhat on the dark side. He had black hair and wore a mustache. The estimate of his height is in the vicinity of 6 feet. Okay, so here's the deal. If they're talking about the Bolton Ford incident, which I think they are, which that happened in January of 60. January 60. So I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, 62, 63. That incident, 100%, was not Oswald, right? So, because Oswald was in the Soviet Union. So I still kind of battle over who this was, even though it's kind of obvious, because the descriptions of the man describe the man as having had a pockmarked face. Obviously, that's Lawrence Howard. But see, when you go back and you look at Lawrence Howard in 1963, that motherfucker was like 300 pounds. When you look at him in 1960, when the Bolton Ford incident occurred, he was slim. He was 200 pounds. 100 pounds fucking difference, right? So when you see these descriptions of the pockmarked man, the pockmarked Latino, or whatever the fuck they describe him as, there's always this weight discrepancy, which is always what fucks me up. But when you look at pictures of Lawrence Howard in 1960, that motherfucker was pretty slim. He wasn't thin. He definitely had some chunk, but he was slender for sure. So here we go. We have this reference here. This is obviously the Bolton Ford incident they're talking about. And so obviously, to me at least, we have Garrison believing this was Kerry Thornley also, which I don't doubt at all. The only person it could have been was William Seymour, who was always around with Lawrence Howard. But I like I said, even though I know that these guys all work together on one big fucking team, I can't specifically put these two guys together and separate it from William Seymour. So we'll see. So here we go. Another one. So same thing, same incident with Mr. Noto. Okay, no, this is not the Bolton Ford incident. Okay, this is yeah, this is definitely not Oswald. This is an incident that gets no attention. Let me screen grab some of this because I'm gonna have to remember this shit. Yes. So the incident. This is okay. What's going on here is this is an incident on the lakefront, a Lake Pontchartrain, involving an arrest of a man who looked like Oswald with another man who was a Latin. So yes, this incident gets no attention whatsoever. None. Like fucking nada. And there's no documentary evidence on it either. Just people who are involved remember it. So once again, it's in the Garrison Kerry Thornley file. So obviously Garrison was pretty sure it was Kerry Thornley. And so it probably fucking was. As you remember from our interview with Chuck Noto, Mr. Noto stated that around October or November of 1962, he arrested two men on the lakefront, one of whom was supposed to be Lee Harvey Oswald. He gauged his time in regards to the fact that Marcel Champon was working late during the time because they were trying to knock off a Mr. Joseph Cronin. Mr. Lousteau also said that he can recall the particular incident that Noto was talking about, but he cannot place any faces or names. He did take a look at the photograph and said that this man is always around the lakefront area fishing, that he has talked to him on several occasions, that he has seen him around a panel truck with a television repair sign on it, which apparently was done by an individual and not by a professional sign painter. However, Lousteau said this could not have happened in 62 because as he remembers it, it was in 1961. 61. This eliminates the possibility that it was Oswald. He said that he can remember Champon staying there late that night in 61, but that he knows this incident could not have happened in October or November of 62 because Joe Cronin was not working for the levee board at the time. Screenshot this. As the date of Mr. Cronin's departure from the levee board seemed to be pertinent to the situation, especially to Mr. Cronin's presence in the levee board police station late at night, I contacted Mrs. Teal at the main office of the Orleans Levee Board and ascertained that Mr. Joseph Cronin was dismissed from the Orleans Levee Board in May of 62. You will recall that Oswald did not get into the United States until June 10th of 62 when he arrived in Dallas from Russia. So, this arrest at the lakefront, not Lee Harvey Oswald, definitely Kerry Thornley. So just in this one document, just in the second half of this one document, today alone, we've covered, 3 separate incidents that are reported as having been Lee Harvey Oswald that were most certainly not. And if you'll notice, these weren't necessarily, I believe the intent was exactly what played out. People see Kerry Thornley, and then later they see Oswald on television, and they file the report based on the information they got from Kerry Thornley at the time when they thought he was Oswald when they find out later on, right? This happens like 100 fucking times. This one, I don't think I'm going to go into the details of this one again. This is pointless. More of the same. What is this one here? Okay, this looks like something different. John J. Becker, 4770 Overton Street, advised that he recalled 2 Cubans and an American coming into the traffic division while he was in charge for the purpose of securing a parade permit. He placed the time of this incident occurred as being in March of 1962. So, yeah, another one. So that's 4 incidents that we've covered today alone that were significant enough for Garrison to have taken note of. So, let me continue. Okay, so this incident here in March of 1962, he pointed out that he retired shortly after this. He further stated that he remembered discussing the situation with a Captain Wilfred A. Grussich Sr., who was then his deputy in the traffic division, and it was agreed that no permit would be given to this group, since they were controversial in nature. It was his definite recollection that these individuals had claimed to represent Cubans in exile in the United States, and they were attempting to raise funds to help Cubans in Cuba fight Fidel Castro. And here they have, check out Kerry Thornley. So, let me grab that again. Here's a problem. So, who do we have in the Kennedy story who's constantly around 2 guys who were believed to have been Cubans, even though neither of them were? You're talking about William Seymour, who looked like Oswald, who impersonated Oswald, and was seen with the husky Latino with a pockmarked face who was Lawrence Howard everywhere. And the third guy, Lauren Hall, who went by Lorenzo Pacello, something like that. He went by a Cuban alias, was not a Cuban, born in Newton, Kansas. But the bottom line is, typically, I would say that this, I don't know, this might not be Kerry Thornley. If this is the same pattern we saw in Dallas, then this is William Seymour. However, Kerry Thornley most certainly was hanging out with Louis Rebel and all those other fucking Cubans down in there. So if Garrison believed that this was Kerry Thornley, I mean, other than the description of the 2 Cubans he went in there to do this with, I really have no reason to doubt that. We'll see. I would say, here's the thing: if ever I'm wrong about any of the Oswald sightings that I've listed as Kerry Thornley or William Seymour, if I'm wrong about any of them, all you have to do is switch those names, and I'm correct, right? So it's 100% of these sightings were one of these 2 men. So if any of the ones I got wrong, you can just rest assured it's the other guy. Mr. Becker could not recall these individuals had actually prepared an application for a permit to parade or had merely come to discuss the possibility of filing an application. He suggested, however, that his secretary at the time, Mrs. Joan Joffrion, who is still secretary to the supervisor of the traffic division, be contacted, as she had handled the paperwork and filing of these permits and in most instances saw the individuals who were requesting parade permits. Captain Wilfred A. Grushik Sr., Deputy Commander, Traffic Division. Oh, this is more on that. So these 3 guys going to get a fucking permit. What does he say here? It says, check out KT. In possible association with Cubans would clarify his function in 62. He's absolutely fucking correct. It would. It would, because here's the thing. Like, Kerry Thornley was like totally on the inner circle with Guy Bannister and all these guys working out of that office. I really can't say the same about William Seymour, because him and those guys that he ran with were more in their own little clique, and they would do what needed to be done, but they were not necessarily like boys with fucking David Ferry and these guys. I kind of put them as like one layer removed. But I might be wrong. I could be completely wrong. I mean, those 3 guys could have been just as much involved with Kerry Thornley and all those guys in New Orleans as everyone else. It's hard to say, because all the fucking files on the guys who are important are gone, or fucking mostly gone. So yeah, Garrison believed that this was Kerry Thornley. I'm going to remain agnostic on this. I'll note it in my book as Garrison believed this to be Kerry Thornley, whether I can prove that or not. Okay, so Captain Grushik was shown a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald taken August 9th, 1963. That was when he was arrested with Carlos Bernier by the New Orleans Police Department, number 112723, Captain Rushik said that although he still felt that Oswald had been the one he was referring to as having been there with the Cubans, he could not state this to be a fact. Right? See, that's how everybody is. Everyone's like, I'm pretty damn sure it was Oswald, but I can't really be sure. Okay, now we're up to Bolton Ford. Okay. Oh, this was 61, not 60. Excuse me on that one. 60. 61. Okay, this is hilarious. I love this note. Show photo of pre-63 Sturgis with scar in left eyebrow, right? Okay, it's not Frank Sturgis, okay? This incident, I'm pretty fucking sure, was Lawrence Howard. So, basically, this is the incident January 20th, 61. Deslat and Moore. Deslat is working at Bolton Ford, and Moore and Oswald come in. I pretty much concluded that this had to have been Lawrence Howard, okay? Because the guy is described as, where is it? It's described as having like pockmarked face and all that stuff, husky. But yeah, here's another incident, the Bolton Ford incident. This is one of the more important incidents because if this is Kerry Thornley, it links Kerry Thornley to 544 Camp Street and all the guys at Guy Bannister's place. It links into that like years before he's supposed to be connected to him, right? So, yeah, this Bolton Ford incident is pretty fascinating, and this is not what triggered the FBI letter. So here's another thing: like, there had to have been this. First off, this 1961, January 61, is the oldest known and like documented sighting of Oswald that wasn't Oswald that we can definitely say occurred. However, the letter written by J. Edgar Hoover about Oswald and somebody using his social security and birth certificate in New Orleans, that was from 1960. That was way prior to this incident at Bolton Ford. So, what incident did they know about that we don't know about? That's a fucking big question. Okay, another one. This is a good one. Allegedly, this is Oswald, but it's not Oswald. Jim Garrison, this is a memo in the Garrison files that refers to an incident in Baton Rouge in reference to Mrs. McGee's statement regarding Lee Harvey Oswald visiting her in October of 63. In answer to her ad in the paper about a garage apartment being vacant, I checked through the classified section of the Baton Rouge newspaper and saw that her ad ran in the paper from Wednesday, October 23rd through Monday, October 28th. This means that the person who came to her house giving the name of Lee Harvey Oswald was at her house on Friday, October 25th, 1963. Oh, and that's all they have on this. Okay, so this incident is great. I don't know if there's anything in here on this file. We're going to wrap up here pretty soon, but let me cover this real quickly. So basically, they go to this woman's fucking house. Well, Oswald allegedly goes to this woman's house with a woman who spoke Russian and their child, right? And I don't remember if she had her baby or not at this point. I think she did. Yeah, she had to have the baby. But yeah, so, what woman would have been seen with Oswald and spoke Russian? Obviously Marina, but obviously we know this isn't Oswald. It had to have been Kerry Thornley. And I'm going to dig out for tomorrow. I'm going to dig out the proof that Oswald and Kerry Thornley knew each other and had been seen together so many times at Oswald's place, at his apartment in New Orleans, that the witness wasn't sure which one was actually married to Marina. So yes. But this incident here I thought was fascinating. I always bring it up because this is one of dozens of incidents where a woman is, after the assassination, Oswald's on television. They see Oswald on television, and turns out it wasn't Oswald, right? October 25th of 63. Where was Oswald October 25th? Well, he allegedly moved into the Marsalis boarding house on the 14th. On the 25th, is he still staying there? No, because Mary Bledsoe kicked him out. This is at a time frame when he is staying in Fort Worth at the Payne residence. Prior to him moving into 1026 North Beckley, which didn't happen until November the 1st, I believe. I don't even remember. I'll have to check my notes. But Yeah, so I think today what we've kind of gotten a grip on is the fact that all these people were making reports of Oswald, and all these people happen to know Kerry Thornley also, right? So to me, it just seemed like more staged events and series of staged events, and that will be the theme of this chapter in the book. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you have not, please set up an account here at Kick. Follow me here and follow me on my gaming channel, which you're going to catch me later on today. And that's going to do it. Tune in tomorrow, probably about the same time, probably about noon or 1 o'clock Eastern time. And that'll do it. Thanks, guys.